Alright, welcome to aircraft recognition. We'll be talking about what it is, what's the point of it, and how to get good at it. So aircraft recognition is known by a few names. I call it REC. Other people might call it ACID for aircraft identification. Some people say Recce instead of REC. Aircraft recognition or aircraft identification is a skill, and it's a practice of being able to tell what an aircraft is. It's a fun subject to learn about. It's a category of competition in the National Intercollegiate Flying Association, which is how I know of it. It's a matter of life and death for some people. Fighter pilots, any aircraft crewmen, they need to know what they're looking at so that they know to shoot at the right thing. Civilian pilots get told to look for this kind of traffic or that kind of traffic, and if you identify the wrong thing and you make the wrong turn at the wrong time, that can have some bad impacts. Air traffic controllers need to know aircraft recognition for a similar reason. And it's also helpful in military and simulation games so that you can tell what you're going up against. So where do you begin? There's a lot of resources out there. Jane's All the World's Aircraft is the end-all be-all of aircraft recognition. It's basically the Bible of rec. The book is huge, expensive for the latest version, and even the old versions are pretty expensive too. So I'll give you some other resources. You can find other books at the bookstore on sale usually. They're generally reliable, they'll have a few mistakes in them. And of course you have Wikipedia, which is free. People say, oh, Wikipedia, oh, it's unreliable. From my experience, no, it's not on this subject at least. Wikipedia does have a list of every aircraft ever, basically. You don't need to know every single thing on the list because there's things that we'll talk about later that are kind of disqualified from competition if you're listening to this video for NIFA purposes. So where else can you begin studying for aircraft recognition? Well, obviously there's a lot of good YouTube channels out there that are dedicated to aircraft recognition and the study of aircraft, including this one. I feature a lot of videos by other creators that you can subscribe to learn more about them. And you can go to other aircraft spotting type websites such as jetphotos.net. FlightAware and FlightRadar 24 are useful for spotting aircraft that are actually flying around in the environment around you, as well as looking up what various airports have and what time your flight is getting in, for example. There's TV shows about aircraft. They're sometimes inaccurate, but usually entertaining, so it'll help you fall in love with the subject. There are podcasts and other media that describe aircraft. They're usually pretty good, but again, sometimes they'll have inaccuracies, so just watch out for that. And if you watch movies for aircraft recognition, you'll get a lot of misinformation, weird airplanes that are just made up, and a lot of junk, but they are pretty fun, so you can watch those too. So what kinds of aircraft should you know? That depends on what your goal is. If you want to just know what's flying around in the sky around you, then look up your local airports. They'll usually be able to tell you what they have. If there's a military base nearby, you should know what branch it is, and then you can Google that branch's aircraft and see what they fly. If there's a big international airport nearby, you'll be able to find what they have on FlightAware, FlightRadar 24, and knowing what airlines fly in and out of there really help. And then small general aviation fields, they'll usually have corporate jets and little prop planes that you can also figure out what they are through FlightAware. If you're competing for NIFA, hopefully you're on my old team so that I'm not helping the competition out too much. And you should know everything that's built after World War I, that's heavier than air, non-experimental or home-built, and no gyrocopters. That's not exactly written in stone, but you should focus on those requirements for now. For current flight team members, your rec coach will be providing you with resources and study guides. Get to know these well, use them well. You can make your own. You can modify them or update old resources and share them with the team. Make sure you get involved and know that it is impossible to be good at rec without practice. Nobody is born with the knowledge you need to succeed. For everyone else, make sure you're utilizing the resources that I had previously mentioned. Start off with the aircraft and categories that are important to you. It'll be much easier to study what you love, and it's harder to study what you hate. So learn to love something about every kind of aircraft or category. Pronunciation and names may be difficult at first. Use Google Translate and find videos about the company or aircraft. to learn how to say the names. And as a side note, don't make fun of someone else's pronunciation, because that might mean that they've just been reading about the aircraft. When you're doing aircraft recognition, it's really useful to know the parts of the airplane, and so you can understand what people are talking about when they're discussing various aircraft types. And then some of the main categories you're going to be focusing on are the wings, engines, fuselage, which is kind of like the body of the aircraft, and the tail. Okay, and lastly here I want to give you some other features to be focusing on when you're doing aircraft recognition. Make sure you're checking the window layout and exits for civilian and commercial aviation type aircraft, because those will be pretty distinctive in the way that they're laid out. And then also the landing gear on aircraft, the number of wheels and the placement of them is pretty important. If the airplane has winglets, usually those can be a distinctive shape. And if you want to use the paint of the aircraft, that can really help you. It can also really hurt you in competition if you're doing it at the national level, or if people are being purposefully deceptive when they paint their aircraft. This has been a brief introduction to aircraft recognition, what it is, how to get good at it, and why you should get good at it. Thank you very much for watching. Make sure you always have fun with it, study hard, and before you know it, you'll be wrecking like a pro.